The sky tore open with fire as the small human ship fell from the stars. Inside, the pilot gripped the controls with shaking hands, his face set with determination. He had survived battles across the galaxy, fought pirates and mercenaries, but this was different. Engines burned, alarms screamed, and the ship broke through the strange atmosphere of an unknown world. Metal twisted, glass cracked, and the vessel came crashing down into the barren surface below. Dust exploded into the air. A long scar cut across the land where the wreck rested. The pilot coughed as he pushed the broken hatch open, climbing out into the alien light. The sky was not like Earth's. It was painted in shifting colors, purple and gold clouds rolling like living waves. Strange towers of stone rose from the ground, and in the distance, fires burned as if from past battles. The air smelled of iron and smoke, and every sound carried like a whisper of danger. He took a breath, steadying himself. He had survived the crash, but survival was never the end. It was only the beginning. He reached for his weapon, a blade of forged steel, and scanned the horizon. That was when he felt it, the eyes watching him from the shadows. Figures moved, tall, powerful, their footsteps echoing on the cracked earth. From behind the rocks, they emerged. Warriors, each one a woman taller than him, armored with bone and steel. Their eyes burned with confidence. Their muscles rippled with strength, and in their hands they carried spears that gleamed with deadly light. They did not speak at first. They circled him like predators studying prey. Then one stepped forward, her voice deep and clear. "Outsider, you have fallen into our world." The pilot tightened his grip on the blade. "I mean no harm," he said, his voice calm though his heart raced. The woman laughed, a sound sharp as steel. "In this land, men are not warriors," she said. "They are prizes, and prizes are claimed through battle." The circle of warriors tightened, spears lowering as their eyes glimmered with hunger for combat. The pilot frowned, confusion mixing with disbelief. He had fought on countless worlds, but never had he heard such a law. "You will fight," another voice said, this one carrying authority. An elder warrior stepped forward, her armor heavy, her gaze unshakable. "If you win, you remain free. If you lose, you belong to the one who defeats you." The human straightened, his pride ignited by the challenge. He had been underestimated before, but always he had proven stronger. He was fast, clever, and fearless. A small smile touched his lips as he lifted his blade. "Then let them come," he said. The first warrior lunged, her spear slicing through the air. The human moved like lightning, sidestepping and striking with his blade. Sparks flew, and the crowd gasped. The warrior fell to the ground, defeated, her weapon knocked away. The circle of women roared with both shock and fury. Another came, and another, each stronger than the last. But each time, the human countered, twisting, dodging, striking with skill learned across a lifetime of war. One after another, the proud warriors fell, their armor cracking, their pride burning. The tribe began to whisper among themselves, their voices trembling with disbelief. "The outsider cannot be beaten," they murmured. The human's chest rose and fell with steady rhythm. Sweat ran down his face, but his eyes were sharp and unbroken. He had proven his strength, and he stood taller than before. "Is that all?" he asked, his voice echoing through the battlefield. For a moment, silence held the tribe. Then, from the far end of the circle, a new figure stepped forward. The air shifted as she appeared, the whispers silenced at once. She was taller, stronger, her armor scarred from battles no outsider could imagine. Her eyes glowed with fire, and even the proud warriors lowered their heads in respect. The human felt something he had not felt in years, the edge of doubt. She spoke only one word, her voice steady as stone. "Mine," she said, claiming the challenge before anyone else could. The tribe roared with approval, their chants shaking the ground. The human tightened his grip, his heart pounding. For the first time since the crash, he wondered if this was a fight he could truly win. The dust swirled, The wind howled, and two warriors faced each other. One a human who believed he could never be defeated. The other a legend among her people, a warrior who had never lost. The world seemed to hold its breath as the battle began. And in that moment, the crash no longer mattered. Only survival did. The tribe formed a wide circle around the two warriors, their chants echoing across the strange sky. Dust rose in spirals as the human stood facing the woman who had claimed him with a single word. She did not rush forward like the others. She moved slowly, her steps heavy with power and control. Her presence alone pressed down on him like a weight, and he knew this fight would be unlike any he had faced before. She lifted her spear, its tip carved from some black crystal that seemed to drink the light. The human raised his blade, trying to calm his breath. He reminded himself that he had already defeated many of them, each one stronger than the last. But this time his heart beat harder, not from fear, but from the sharp awareness that his opponent carried something beyond strength. She carried certainty. The crowd grew silent, waiting for the first strike. The human decided to test her, rushing forward with speed that had broken the others. He slashed low, aiming for her legs, then twisted up in a rising strike. But she was already moving, her spear spinning with impossible precision. The blade rang as steel met crystal, the sound cracking like thunder across the plain. She pushed him back with one strike, and he staggered 2 steps. The warriors watching cheered, their voices shaking the ground. The human narrowed his eyes and tried again, this time feinting left then rolling right. But she read his movements as if she had known them before he made them. Her spear cut the air inches from his chest, and the ground split where it struck. He clenched his jaw, sweat dripping into his eyes. Never had he met a fighter who could follow his speed, yet she moved like a mirror. Every strike he made, she answered with equal force. Every dodge he attempted, she closed the gap before he could escape. The battle was not only strength, it was mind against mind, and he felt the pressure rising. The warriors of the tribe began to chant her name, each voice carrying power and rhythm. It felt like the world itself wanted him to lose. Still, he pushed forward, his blade flashing, striking high and low. Sparks lit the battlefield as steel and crystal clashed again and again. Neither gave ground, neither broke, but with every moment her control grew stronger. The human began to notice something. She was not fighting to kill him. Her strikes aimed to break his defense, to push him down. She wanted victory, not his death, and that was more terrifying. He realized that to her, this was not just combat, this was a ritual, and the ritual demanded she claim him. His blade trembled in his grip, his arms heavy from the endless exchange. She circled him, her eyes burning with steady fire. "You are fast," she said, her voice cutting through the noise of the tribe. "But speed is not enough." She lunged, her spear driving forward with such force that the ground cracked beneath her feet. The human twisted aside, barely escaping the strike. The spear grazed his arm, and blood ran down his sleeve. Pain seared through him, but he forced himself to stay standing. The crowd roared at the sight of his blood, as if the ritual demanded sacrifice. The woman stepped closer, her shadow falling over him. For the first time, he felt his body failing to match his will. His strength burned out faster than hers, his breathing ragged and shallow. Still, he raised his blade, refusing to surrender. The human spirit inside him burned, even when his body begged him to fall. And that stubborn fire drew respect from the eyes of his enemy. The clash went on, each strike heavier than the last. The human staggered back, his legs weak, his arms shaking. She pressed harder, her spear moving like a storm, her rhythm unbroken. Finally, with one sharp twist, she knocked his blade aside. The sound of metal falling to the ground rang louder than thunder. The human fell to his knees, his chest heaving. Her spear tip rested just at his throat, not piercing but claiming. Silence spread across the tribe, every warrior holding their breath. She lowered her weapon and spoke in a voice that carried to every ear. "He is mine," she declared. The crowd erupted, chants rising like a wave of fire across the sky. Drums beat from somewhere deep within the camp, their rhythm pounding like a heart. The women raised their weapons high, honoring the victor. And yet, instead of humiliation, the human felt something else. The way she looked at him was not with scorn, but with respect earned through battle. Exhausted, bleeding, but unbroken in spirit, he stared up at her. His pride stung, but his will remained alive. He realized that for the first time since his crash, he had met someone who could truly stand against him. And perhaps, in this strange world, defeat was not the end, but the beginning of something greater. The campfires burned long into the night, throwing strange shadows across the warrior tribe. The human sat at the edge of the fire circle, his arm wrapped in rough cloth where her spear had cut him. Around him, the women feasted, laughed, and struck their weapons against the ground in rhythm. Every sound was wild, filled with pride, for they had witnessed something rare. They had seen their champion fight an outsider, and for the first time, she had declared a man hers. The human kept his eyes on her, the woman who had defeated him. She sat at the center of the circle, her armor shining red in the firelight, her face calm and unreadable. She was not like the others who had rushed at him with hunger for victory. Her presence was different, heavier, as if her very being demanded respect. He understood now why the tribe had fallen silent the moment she stepped forward. Whispers passed around the fire. The name of the warrior carried from mouth to mouth. They called her Serenia, a name spoken with honor and fear alike. To the tribe, she was not just a fighter, she was their living legend. Stories of her victories stretched far across the lands of this world. No woman had ever defeated her, and no man had ever faced her and remained standing. The human clenched his fists, his pride wounded yet alive. He had been broken in battle before, but never claimed as if he were a prize. To him, strength was freedom, and freedom was survival. But here, on this strange world, strength meant belonging to whoever proved superior. And by their law, he now belonged to her. When the feasting ended, Serenia rose, her shadow long against the fire. She walked toward him, her steps slow, her eyes fixed on him as if measuring his soul. The other warriors grew quiet, their attention following her every move. She stopped before him, towering above where he sat. "You fought well," she said, her voice low but sharp, "better than most of my own." The human lifted his chin, his eyes steady despite his exhaustion. "I do not belong to anyone," he replied, his voice firm. The tribe gasped, for no one had ever dared speak against her claim. But Serenia did not strike him down, nor did she laugh. Instead, she leaned closer, her gaze burning into his. "On this world," she said, "strength writes the law, and I defeated you." Her words carried no arrogance, only truth. "But you did not break," she added, her tone shifting like tempered steel. "That is why I claim you, not as a prize of shame, but as a warrior worth respect." The fire crackled between them, sealing the weight of her words. The human felt a strange mix of anger and something deeper. It was true he had lost, but it was also true she had seen his will. There was no mockery in her eyes, no cruelty, only recognition. It was a rivalry not born of hate, but of equals forced together by the clash of destiny. And that made her far more dangerous than any enemy he had faced before. The next day, the tribe began its rituals of challenge. Warriors trained, sparring with one another in preparation for future battles. The human was brought into the center, forced to witness their ways. Every duel ended with either pride or surrender, but never with death. Strength was not only about survival here. It was about proving who had the right to lead. Serenia watched him from across the grounds, never taking her eyes off him. It was not the stare of possession, but the gaze of someone who measured every move. She wanted to see if his spirit would bend now that he had been defeated, but he refused to bow. Even when surrounded, even when reminded that he was claimed. Each time their eyes met, a silent fire burned stronger between them. At night, he lay awake, staring at the strange stars above. He wondered what kind of world he had fallen into, a world where women fought for mates, where strength defined every bond. And yet, despite everything, he could not shake the thought of her. The warrior who had stood against him, who had broken his blade, who had looked at him as more than prey. The rivalry had begun, a bond forged not in peace, but in combat. He hated the chain of defeat, yet he felt drawn to the one who had placed it on him. The tribe saw him as her possession, but he saw himself as her equal waiting for another chance. In his heart, he knew this was not the end of their fight. It was only the beginning of something greater, something neither of them fully understood. The days that followed were filled with tension. The human walked among the tribe, watched by curious eyes, some filled with respect, others with suspicion. Every step reminded him that he was not free. He was claimed, bound by a law he had never chosen. Yet inside him burned the same fire that had carried him through battles across the stars. He refused to believe that one loss defined his fate. Serenia, the warrior who had defeated him, did not chain him or treat him like a weak prize. Instead, she tested him, forcing him into sparring sessions with other warriors. Each fight was brutal, spears clashing, blades ringing, sweat and blood mixing under the harsh sky. The human won some, lost others, but each time he pushed himself harder. Every time he fell, he rose again, refusing to stay broken. The tribe began to whisper more, their voices carrying a strange mixture of awe and doubt. Never before had a claimed outsider shown such spirit. Some said he was dangerous, that no man should carry such fire. Others said he was chosen by the stars, a sign of change to come. But all knew one truth. His story was tied to Serenia now. One evening, as the sun sank behind the jagged horizon, Serenia challenged him again. This time not in ritual, but in private. They stood in the training grounds, dust swirling, torches casting long shadows. Her voice was steady, her eyes sharp as steel. "You still carry defiance," she said. "Show me again why you think you can stand against me." The human gripped his blade, his muscles tense with determination. He had waited for this moment, a chance to reclaim his pride. They circled each other, silence heavy in the air. Then the clash began, faster, sharper than before. Steel and crystal rang out, sparks flying like stars falling to the ground. He moved with everything he had, his strikes fierce and desperate. She met each one with calm precision, her spear flowing like water. The human's rage gave him speed, but rage also clouded his vision. Serenia's eyes saw every opening, every mistake, and with each heartbeat, she began to turn the battle her way. The fight lasted longer than before, the human refusing to yield. Sweat poured down his face, his arms trembled, yet his spirit refused to break. He landed a strike against her armor, leaving a scar across the metal. For a brief moment, pride filled his chest, but then her spear struck back with force that knocked him to the ground. He rolled, pushing himself up, his blade raised once more. But her movements were relentless, her strikes faster, heavier. Every time he stood, she drove him down again, until finally, his legs gave out, his arms heavy as stone. He collapsed, his blade falling from his grasp. Serenia stood over him, her spear tip at his chest. The firelight flickered across her face, calm and unshaken. "You fight like no other," she said, her tone carrying both respect and finality. "But strength is not only about refusing to fall. It is about knowing when you're truly beaten." Her words cut deeper than any wound, because he knew she was right. The tribe gathered, watching in silence as their champion stood victorious once more. The human's chest rose and fell, his breath ragged, but his eyes still burned with defiance. He wanted to rise, to try again, but his body refused. And in that moment, he realized the truth. He had not only lost, he had been truly defeated. Serena lowered her spear, extending a hand to him. It was not the hand of a conqueror mocking her prize. It was the hand of a warrior acknowledging another. Slowly, he took it, pulling himself to his feet. The crowd erupted in chants, the sound shaking the ground. But this time, the defeat felt different. It was not humiliation, it was transformation. For in losing, he had seen the depth of her strength and the truth of his own limits. And deep within, he understood something he had never accepted before. Sometimes, defeat was the path to becoming stronger. The days after his defeat were quiet, yet heavy with meaning. The human no longer carried the illusion that he could simply rise and reclaim his pride by force. Serena had broken that illusion with her spear, and with it, she had forced him to see himself in a new light. But she had also shown him something he had not expected: respect. And respect, in this strange world, was worth more than freedom. The tribe treated him differently now. He was no longer seen as just an outsider or a prize that their champion had claimed. They looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and respect, for he had fought Serena twice and survived both times. No other man would have endured that, and though he had lost, his spirit had refused to bend. Serena did not mock him, nor did she remind him of his defeat. Instead, she included him in her training. She made him spar against her warriors, teaching him their ways. Her voice carried no softness, but no cruelty either, only the firm weight of expectation. She wanted him to grow, to sharpen himself further. At first, he resisted, his pride still raw. But as days passed, he began to see the purpose in her actions. Her people did not fight to destroy each other. They fought to protect their tribe. Strength was not just for pride here, it was for survival. And in that survival, bonds were forged stronger than steel. Slowly, the human began to learn their methods. He studied the way they moved in rhythm, the way their chants filled the air before battle. He learned how their weapons were not only tools of war, but symbols of honor. And most of all, he learned how Serena stood at the center of it all, not because she had taken that place, but because her strength demanded it. At night, when the fires burned low, they sometimes spoke, not as conqueror and claimed, but as two warriors who had tested each other. She asked him about the stars, about the battles he had fought beyond their skies. He told her of ships that tore through space, of soldiers who fought with machines. Her eyes listened with a quiet fire, as if weighing the truth of every word. In return, she told him of her world, of the old wars that had shaped her people, of the battles fought not just for power, but for survival against the endless dangers of their land. She told him of the law of challenge, where only the strongest could claim, and he realized it was not cruelty, it was the order that kept them alive. With each conversation, the human began to see her not only as his rival, but as something more, a mirror that showed him both his strength and his weakness. A warrior who carried scars not as shame, but as proof of survival. And against his will, he felt the bond between them grow. The tribe began to notice too. They saw the way he no longer stood apart, but walked among them. The way his blade moved faster with each day, sharper with each sparring session. They began to chant his name alongside hers during training, two voices woven together, as if destiny had bound them both. Yet the human knew this bond was dangerous, for it was not built on peace, but on the edge of combat. Every glance between them still carried the weight of rivalry. Every word was sharpened with the memory of battles past. But beneath that edge, something stronger was forming: trust. One night, as the stars burned above and the tribe slept, Serena spoke to him. "You fight like one who has lost everything before," she said, her voice steady. He did not answer at first, but then he nodded. "I fight because if I do not, I am nothing," he replied. She studied him in silence, then spoke. "Then perhaps you and I are not so different." For the first time since his crash, he did not feel like a prisoner. He felt like a warrior standing beside another warrior. The bond between them was not gentle. It was forged in battle, sharpened by defeat and tempered by respect. And in that bond, he found something stronger than pride. He found belonging, even if he could not yet admit it aloud. The bond between the human and Serenia grew stronger with each passing day. But the peace within the tribe did not last. One morning, as the sun rose red over the horizon, scouts rushed into the camp, their armor scratched, their faces pale. They carried news that chilled even the fiercest warriors. A new force was coming, and it was not of their world. The human knew the signs the moment he heard their words. The skies had shimmered with fire, not unlike the way his ship had fallen. Only this time, the falling stars were not accidents, they were vessels. Ships breaking through the atmosphere, carrying soldiers, weapons, and hunger for conquest. The tribe gathered, fear mixing with fury, their chants rising in defiance. Serenia stood tall at the center, her voice steady. "This is no raid, no ritual of challenge," she declared. "These are outsiders who come not to test their strength, but to take everything we are." Her people roared, striking their weapons against the ground. But the human's heart sank, for he knew what they faced. He had seen these kinds of invaders before. Armies that scoured planets, stripping them of life and leaving only ash. He knew their technology, their weapons, their merciless ways. And though the tribe was strong, though Serenia was unmatched, their traditions alone would not save them. They needed strategy. They needed something beyond ritual combat. The human stepped forward, his voice carrying across the crowd. "I know these enemies," he said. "I have fought them, and I have survived." At first, the tribe murmured with doubt. Why should they listen to an outsider, a man claimed in battle? But Serenia lifted her hand, silencing them, her eyes locked on his. "Speak," she commanded, and he did. He told them of the invaders' weapons, of their formations, of the way they attacked in waves to exhaust their prey. He explained how raw strength alone would fail, how unity and timing would be their only chance. The warriors listened, their expressions hard. For the first time, they were being asked to fight not as individuals proving dominance, but as a force bound together. Training began that very night. The human showed them formations, how to move as one, how to cover each other's weaknesses. At first, the tribe resisted, their pride clashing with the idea of relying on another. But Serenia enforced his words with her authority. "If we do not learn, we die," she told them, and that was enough. Together, they forged something new, the tribe's raw power combined with the human's cunning. They moved in lines, shields interlocked, spears thrusting in rhythm. They learned to break from the circle of ritual and form the wall of war. And slowly, the fear in their eyes turned into fire once more. Serenia trained beside him, never asking for rest. Their bond deepened in every clash, every shared command, every moment they stood shoulder to shoulder. No longer rivals locked in personal battle. They became leaders of a single cause. He corrected her when her spear left an opening. She corrected him when his timing faltered. Together, they shaped the tribe into something greater than it had ever been. Yet the threat grew closer. At night, the skies burned with the lights of enemy ships descending. The ground trembled as machines moved through the forest beyond. The air filled with the strange hum of alien engines. Every sound was a reminder that time was running out. The human sharpened his blade, his mind racing. He knew the invaders carried weapons far beyond steel and bone. He had seen worlds burn under their fire. And though he had given the tribe new strength, he feared it might still not be enough. But when he looked at Serenia, he saw no fear in her eyes, only certainty. "We will fight," she said simply, "and we will not break." Her words steadied him in a way no weapon ever had. For the first time since his crash, he felt not only like a survivor, but like a part of something larger. The tribe was no longer just Serenia's people. They were his people too. And together, they would face the storm that was coming. The night before the invasion, the tribe gathered in silence. They painted their faces with ash and blood, symbols of defiance against the darkness. The human stood among them, the chants echoing through his bones. He knew tomorrow would decide everything. Not just for him, not just for Serenia, but for the future of this world. The dawn came heavy with smoke. The sky glowed red as the invaders descended, their ships cutting through the clouds like blades. The ground shook as their machines landed, massive walkers stepping onto the soil of Serenia's world. From their metal bellies poured soldiers in armor of steel and fire, carrying weapons that spat death across the field. The tribe stood waiting, their chants rising like thunder. The human tightened his grip on his blade. He had fought armies like this before, he had seen planets fall, but never had he felt what he felt now. He was not just fighting for survival. He was fighting for a people who had accepted him, for a bond forged in battle and respect. Beside him stood Serenia, her spear gleaming black in the rising sun. Her eyes fixed on the enemy, unshaken, unbroken, ready. The invaders opened fire, bolts of light tearing across the plain. The human shouted commands, and the tribe moved as one, shields rising, lines holding firm. What once was chaos and ritual combat had now become order. Spears thrust in rhythm, shields locked tight, warriors covering one another. The first wave of enemy soldiers crashed against them and broke like water against stone. Serenia led the charge, her spear piercing through steel, her strength carrying her into the heart of the fight. The human followed, his blade cutting through the gaps in enemy armor, fast and precise. They moved together like two halves of the same storm. Every strike he made, she answered with another. Every enemy that tried to flank her, he cut down, and every foe that turned toward him, she destroyed. The battle raged across the field, screams mixing with chants, steel clashing with fire. The tribe fought harder than they ever had, not for dominance, but for survival. For the first time, they fought as one people, guided by both their champion and the outsider she had once claimed. The invaders pressed harder, bringing machines that spat fire. But the human had prepared for this. "Bring them down," he shouted, and the warriors obeyed. They used the land itself, leading the machines into rocky traps where spears and ropes tore their legs apart. They moved with speed and unity, each warrior fighting not alone, but as part of something greater. The invaders began to falter, their advance slowed by the unexpected ferocity of the defense. For the first time, the enemy stumbled, but the human knew victory would not come easy. From the largest ship stepped the enemy commander, clad in black armor, a blade of energy burning in his hands. His presence was like a shadow, swallowing the light. The human felt his blood chill, for he had seen such commanders before. They were more than soldiers, they were destroyers of worlds. The commander cut through the tribe like fire through dry grass. No warrior could stand against him, not even the strongest, until Serenia stepped forward, her spear raised, her voice cutting through the chaos. "This ends with me," she declared. The commander turned, his visor glowing red, and their battle began. The human wanted to join, but the tribe held the line against the enemy soldiers. He fought fiercely, his blade flashing, his voice guiding the formation. But his eyes never left Serenia. She moved with the force of the storm, each strike of her spear shaking the ground. Yet the commander matched her, his blade of energy tearing sparks from her weapon. Their duel was brutal, faster than the eye could follow. The human's chest tightened with fear, for he saw her stumble under the force of a strike. Without thought, he broke from a line, charging toward her. The commander raised his weapon for a killing blow, but the human threw himself forward, blocking the strike with his own blade. Steel met energy, the shock tearing through his body, but he held on. Serenia rose, her eyes blazing with fire. Together, they fought the commander, blade and spear moving as one. Every strike he blocked, she countered. Every strike she missed, he covered. Until at last, with a roar, Serenia drove her spear through the commander's chest. The field fell silent, the invaders watching their leader collapse. Then the tribe's roar broke the silence, rising like a storm across the plain. The invaders faltered, their lines breaking, their will shattered. The human raised his blade high. Serena lifted her spear beside him, and together they led the final charge that drove the enemy back into the fire from which they came. When the dust settled, the tribe stood victorious. The ground was scarred, the air thick with smoke, but they had endured. The human stood beside Serena, his body weary, his spirit alive. She looked at him, her voice quiet but strong. "You are no longer claimed," she said. "You are my equal." For the first time since his crash, he felt the truth of belonging. Not as a prize, not as a prisoner, but as a warrior who had fought and bled beside them. The tribe chanted their names together, voices rising to the sky. The human had come as a stranger, fallen from the stars. But he had stayed to fight, to endure, and to find his place in the heart of the warrior who had once defeated him.